absolute banger. Coming up this weekend at UFC 276 in the main event, Israel Adesanya looking to hold on to his middleweight strap, taking on a fresh challenger. And this is what we love. It's the Killa Gorilla, Jared Cannonier, a guy who has had a wild MMA career from early beginnings in Alaska, coming into the UFC at heavyweight, getting knocked out by Sean Jordan in his debut, going down to 205, losing to Jan Blachowicz and Dominic Reyes, and then making the move down to 185 and finding a home. And if you look at it for Cannonier and you consider his last 5 fights, I'm going to talk about them. I mean, wins over Anderson Silva, Jack Hermanson, a loss to Robert Whittaker, win over Kelvin Gastelum, and Derek Brunson his last time out in the title eliminator. And Brunson was like, look, I've got 2 fights left. We're going to see how it happens. And in the first round, Derek Brunson rocks Jared Cannonier and drops him. And in the second round, Jared Cannonier goes, I'm just a wild man with crystals and an aura of steel. And in that one, he's able to rally back and finish Derek Brunson. And Brunson looked completely gassed in that second round. But Cannonier able to finish him off and looked amazing for Israel Adesanya since losing to Jan Blachowicz. He beats Marvin Vettori. He beats Robert Whittaker soundly in their second fight. But Matt, I absolutely love this matchup because it's so much more fun to see a new challenger than some of the recycled names up at the top of the middleweight division.
100%. I do think this should be an enjoyable fight for as long as it lasts, because for Jared Cannonier, he has shown a really nice ability at 185, not only to knock out his opponents, but he has fixed the one hole that plagued him in the other weight classes. He was an awful wrestler up at 205 and 100 and at heavyweight. But at 185 pounds, his physical strength is undeniable. Like, when guys go to take him down and he digs those underhooks, there's not a man alive who can break that hold from him, because he is so physically strong with his takedown defense that it really has been able to accentuate his striking on the feet and allow him to really focus on that one area. And like you said, even go back to the Derek Brunson fight. Derek Brunson was using a lot of ducks into his own strikes to kind of threaten with the takedown, but once he started to tire down, even a little bit, Cannonier jumped on him, and the second he pounced on him for the kill, the fight was pretty much over. And that's what I do like about Jared Cannonier. He has a very high finishing ability if he has his opponent hurt. And I know that might be weird to hear, because after the Anderson Silva win, he wasn't necessarily going for the knockout as much, even in the Robert Whittaker fight. I know in the third round he rallied a little bit in that last minute or so, but he was losing that fight quite handily throughout it. What I do like about Cannonier, though, is once he has a guy wobbled, he is very intelligent about finishing them. He doesn't just rush in and try to throw a crazy combination to win automatically. He'll stay very patient, work behind a single shot. And I think that's really important against a guy like Israel Adesanya, who, in the few times that we have seen him hurt in the UFC, guys kind of panic. They get so excited that, oh my goodness,
This isn't supposed to happen.
yeah, like, Kelvin Gastelum's like, I head kicked Adesanya, what? Like, Rafael Cordero probably pumps his guys up as much as anybody in the gym. Like, Cordero's a positive guy. He's the type of guy who, when you hit his glove on the last combination, he'll loosen it a little bit so you hit it across the room. But, like, he must have been pumping Jared Cannonier up for that fight. But what
Diamond tipped hard.
But what I like about Cannonier is he has great takedown defense, which it probably won't come into play a lot in this fight, but he has very good defensive striking too. And I do think that's really the first thing I've talked about when you're fighting a guy like Israel Adesanya, is how small can you leave the windows open for a guy like Adesanya? Because that's all he's waiting for. He's trying to set you up to overextend yourself to make a mistake, and then your first mistake, last mistake, to quote Dave Mustaine, is normally how Israel Adesanya is able to win his fights. But that's the thing that I'm going to say, and this is how I'll leave it to you. I'm a little worried that this fight might be a little boring, because if you look back at the Yoel Romero fight, it was a fighter who has a lot of power, who doesn't throw a lot of volume, who fights in a bit of a defensive shell. Well, that's kind of what Jared Cannonier is too, and I do worry that if Cannonier doesn't let his own hands go, we are going to see a very similar fight to the Yoel Romero-Israel Adesanya matchup.
I mean, to move forward with the song quote from Megadeth, who have an album coming out this year.
I didn't know that.
First mistake, no more mistakes. And when you look at Jared Cannonier, he has 5 knockdowns in the UFC. He is a winning fighter. He's going to be fighting for the title. He's also been knocked down 5 times. Like, there is a...
At higher weight classes than this one, though.
There is a yin and a yang. Obviously, Brunson dropped him their last time out. When you look at it, Cannonier extended himself, and Brunson threw the weirdest shot. Like, it was almost like he took an oar from a boat and swung it sideways, because he swung his right arm, hit him with the side of his fist, dropped him, and then he followed up with it. When you look at the way that Cannonier hurt Brunson, Cannonier catches an elbow in the clinch. Brunson is already tired. He's wobbled. And then Cannonier is reserved. He doesn't just run after the kill. He picks his shots. He lands another elbow. And then once the fight's down on the mat, I haven't seen referee Kerry Hatley doing a lot of UFC fights, but referee Kerry Hatley let too many back fists go.
Clean elbows just like on the ground. They were disgusting.
It was like, well, Kerry liked Brock Lesnar when he was in the UFC. I like what Jared's doing, so let's let that go some more. But yeah, I do liken it to that Yoel Romero fight because Cannonier fights with a defensive style always. You go to kick to the body, he's very quick to duck down. When he swooped against Robert Whittaker at 55 seconds of the first round of their fight, he broke his ulna. But the guy fought with a broken ulna till the end of the fight, so you know how tough Jared Cannonier is. But when you look at this matchup, yeah, I mean, for Adesanya, the lateral movement, the in and out, like all of those things are there. And if it just comes to pure striking, there's not many people in this division that hold a candle to Israel Adesanya.
This is the interesting part about this fight, though. Jared Cannonier checks leg kicks and throws very good leg kicks himself. Adesanya does rely on that a lot when he's fighting guys who don't open up with their own hands. So, again, this almost might play more into this fight might not be the most exciting because, let's say Adesanya, he's throwing some jabs, he's having okay success on the outside, but hitting a lot of arms. Well, normally Izzy's next plan B is, okay, go to leg kicks and start working those. If Cannonier is checking the leg kick from the outside, I'm very curious to see what is the next step of Adesanya's kind of evolution with his game, because it normally goes boxing, kicks, and then I mix the two together once you make a mistake. In this fight, it almost might have to be in reverse. Start out kicking, see if he can defend that, and then add some other tools into the game. So I do like in this fight either the Brad Tavares fight or the Yoel Romero one, because in the Brad Tavares fight, it was kind of close. Tavares isn't the easiest guy to hit clean, especially early on in fights, but every minute the fight went by, Brad Tavares got a little bit more tired, a little bit more tired, a little bit more tired. And when you're 100%, when you wake up in the morning, you're pretty alert, right? Right before you go to bed at night, you're probably not that alert because it's been a long day. Jared Cannonier's fighting style is very similar to a long day at work. In the morning, he's going to be good. He's going to be all there. But I do think that as this fight does go on, his hands are going to come down a little bit more and a little bit more. He's going to be more wary of the body shot. He's going to be more wary of just all the offensive tools that Adesanya has at his disposal. And I do expect later on in this fight for Izzy to maybe not get a knockout, but I do think his combinations will start to land the 4th and 5th round. And whether that leads to a stoppage or not, I do think that they'll be able to land some really big shots.
Yeah, and when you look at Cannonier's fight against Kelvin Gastelum, a guy who's had some great fights and a guy who's had some odd fights.
It's been a while.
It's kind of been everywhere and in between. You look at the Cannonier fight against Gastelum as a main event from last year, and Cannonier was able to drop him in the 3rd round. Volume totals are really low for both guys, so a little bit of a chess match there. When you're taking on a guy like Adesanya, you got to do something. Could it be the threat of the takedown to then work his strikes? Could it be a clinch situation to try and get him up against the fence? Like, Vettori was able to back up Adesanya, but he wasn't able to do anything with it. He wasn't able to land much in terms of volume. He wasn't able to get many of the takedowns. What can Cannonier do to figure out Adesanya? Because Adesanya doesn't always have to rely on forward pressure. There's fighters out there, like Sean O'Malley on this card. He can strike on the back foot, land with power and volume and accuracy. Those guys and gals are few and far between. Adesanya, O'Malley, a couple of guys like that are cut from that.
And that's what I keep on going back to. So for Jared Cannonier, I think a lot of his focus is going to have to be defensively early on in this fight. But if it is defensively, because he does like to keep his hands up high, that's going to leave the body kick open a lot for Adesanya. And yes, Cannonier can check leg kicks, but I do think that body is going to be wide open for Adesanya to get after. And let's say he's not landing a lot to the head or to the leg in the 1st round, but he is making use of that body shot. That is going to, again, make Cannonier think about that extra layer of striking defense. Probably going to make him move his hands a little bit more. It might even make him more desperate as the fight goes on, because he realizes, okay, I'm getting hit with a front kick. I'm kind of getting prodded at as this fight continues. So I do think early on it might be boring. I'll say round 4 and 5 could be really exciting. But no matter how exciting or how boring the fight is, I still go back to favoring Adesanya at most of the ranges.
This could be one of those weird fights like Namajunas Esparza where nothing happens, and then at the end of it you go, well, Adesanya won, and then the judges read a scorecard for Cannonier and everybody's upset and irate. Like the last, 3 or 4 main events. Holm, Vieira, Cater, Emmett, the last one that you had, Zaruki and Gamrot. Things have been all over the place in the sport of MMA. When you look at the odds for this fight, Adesanya open to -300, -395 right now on best fight odds for Cannonier. Open to +250, +300. We have a look at the Topology votes. Surprise to us as they are to you, Matt, but I'm going to say over under 85% Adesanya.
I think it'll be 90.
It's going to be 91% going with Adesanya. There's 909 total votes on that one. So, I mean, listen, the fans overwhelmingly going with Israel Adesanya to get the win. But that's not all, Matt, because in these main events, we always toss this one out there to the YouTube community tab for you folks that are following along at home. You can join in the community tab and have your say. We post polls quite often. We have more votes. 1,200 total votes. 84% Adesanya. 16% Cannonier. Some of the comments on there. JC Gamer, I kind of see it being like Adesanya versus Costa, where Cannonier just can't land anything significant. And Adesanya picks him apart with leg kicks. I think Adesanya will win by KO. But I could also see a win via decision for Adesanya. So thank you for throwing that out there. Chad, the UFC dad, who's always in the comments section. The playbook is out on how to beat Izzy. And if Jared can translate that to heavyweight frame, hold Adesanya down for 3 out of 5 rounds like Jan did, I can see an upset. But with that said, Izzy via, I'm not going to say it, but quite handily. Gerald Lynch, a vote here costs nothing. Watch who draws the real wager. By the time, Jared will probably be a plus 400 underdog. And I'll go with one more, Matt. Bob saying Adesanya by leg kicks. Matt, I agree with you. I think leg kicks are a little bit of an oddity because, like you said, Cannonier does check leg kicks, and Cannonier has thunderous leg kicks in his own.
I'm not here to say, like, oh, I'm really smart or good at this by any means.
And I don't want to disagree with the fans.
But that's been my big thing that no one's really talked about, and I'm really surprised about it. Like, Cannonier's great at throwing offensive leg kicks to the point that he stopped Anderson Silva with one. And he also checks them defensively. But for some reason, Israel Adesanya is the guy who's going to be able to do it time after time. Now, if he throws combinations with his hands and then ends it with a leg kick, then of course, it's going to be almost impossible for Jared Cannonier to predict exactly what Adesanya is throwing in combination form. But again, just standing in the middle of the cage, strike for strike, I do think Cannonier is an intelligent enough fighter to just be sound defensively early on. And again, I don't say that to mean that he's going to win the early rounds. I just don't think he's going to take a lot of damage in them either. Now, as the fight continues, as he gets tired, maybe the hands do come down and he is more susceptible to a big shot, but I think Adesanya has one of his most comfortable stylistic matchups he's had in a long time when he fights Cannonier.
So coming up this weekend, both of us going with Nigeria and New Zealand's own. There wasn't enough room in that title box there, so I went New Zealand, but you know the drill. Israel Adesanya to get the win. I can't wait for the fight. Question mark kicks have been popping off the last couple of weeks. That's 2 hours before the prelims on the channel. Make sure you check out that show. We have a lot of fun over there. That chat fills up and we try and answer as many questions, comments as we can. But if you missed that, or if you want to join in the sidekick, the Fight Night Pick sidekick for the main card of the pay-per-view cards, we go live. We're here on YouTube. We're watching fights. We're hanging out. We're having the conversation with you as well. It's the best part of the week. It's the best part of the channel for me. It's not just me talking into a camera. We actually get to talk to the folks out there. Matt, I know there's so many good fights on this card, but if I could really just put you in a corner, what's your favorite one that you can't miss?
I'm really excited for Alex Pereira versus Sean Strickland. Again, like I said, I really enjoy when you have a fight on the main card that just sort of sets you up for what the next title fight is going to be. No matter who wins in this main event between Jared Cannonier and Israel Adesanya, their likely next opponent is going to be either Sean Strickland or Alex Pereira, and I really like that because we just have a very clear mind as to, okay, what's next? That's why I like tournaments in MMA. MMA matchmaking is so odd. You can have ranked fighters fighting unranked fighters. They can fight above their ranking, below their ranking, any which way in between. I really like it when there's some sort of a game plan or roadmap into, okay, if this guy wins this fight, he'll fight that person. If he beats that person, then maybe he'll get a title shot. I really like how this card seems to be set up in that fashion.
Give me the old guys. It's Miller time, the champagne of beers. Donald Cerrone, Jim Miller on short notice at 170. I like a little bit of weird, but if you like the old guy fights, Robbie Lawler, Ryan Barberena, they're going to throw down, not to say that Barberena's old, but Robbie Lawler is a man. He's 40. So many good fights coming up this weekend. The podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Really want to thank everybody so much for joining in. An extra long edition of Fight Night Picks. You're going to want to keep it locked in. And as we always say, let's get into it.